What has been established so far is that sleep occurs in 5 phases, which are repeated throughout the night. These phases are further divided into 2 sections, based upon the occurrence of rapid eye movement, or REM. Phases 1 to 4 are referred to as non-REM sleep, whilst the 5th phase is called REM sleep. During phase 1, the brain activity waves slow down to between 4 and 8 cycles per second, and these are known as theta waves. This phase is a transition between being awake and asleep. A person may be only half aware of his surroundings and may not actually realize that he has begun to fall asleep. Eye movement is slow as the eyes roll from side to side. Muscle activity remains similar to the awake but relaxed state. Phase 1 may last for up to 10 minutes. After phase 1, phase 2 occurs. This phase lasts for roughly 20 minutes and forms 45 to 55% of total sleep. Heart rate, breathing, and temperature all reduce, and eye movement generally stops, and muscles start to become relaxed. Brain waves are similar to those during phase 1, but may occasionally spike. Phases 3 and 4 constitute deep sleep, characterized by slow, high-amplitude delta waves. The wave frequency is between 0.5 and 2 per second, and this sleep is also called slow wave sleep. The difference between phases 3 and 4 depends on the amount of delta waves. If the delta waves account for more than 50%, then this is regarded as phase 4. Phases 3 and 4 together last for about 30 minutes, and is when the main regeneration processes occur that we mentioned earlier. The greater the physical activity undertaken during the day, the greater the phase 3 and phase 4 sleep. A person waking up from these phases will feel very groggy and suffer sleep inertia. It is not advisable to resume flying within 30 minutes of waking up from such a deep sleep. After phase 4, there is a brief return to phase 2 before moving to the 5th phase or REM sleep phase. During this phase, there is great mental activity. This rapid eye movement is similar to a person awake, and consequently, this phase is sometimes called the paradoxical phase. We mentioned earlier that phases 1 to 5 are repeated throughout the night. The first episode of phase 5, the REM phase, usually begins about 70 to 90 minutes after we fall asleep, and there are usually 4 to 6 of these episodes each night, each episode getting progressively longer, and frequently the longest occurs just before we awake, which is why sometimes we remember what we've been dreaming. The function of REM sleep is to strengthen and organize memory. For example, after a period of learning new tasks, REM will increase, and in addition, REM sleep contributes to emotional equilibrium and good humor. The sleep-wake cycle can be thought of as a credit and debit system. In this system, the individual is given 2 points credit for every hour spent asleep, and has 1 point deducted for every hour spent awake. The maximum credit available is 16 points, which is 2 points per hour up to a maximum sleep of 8 hours. You cannot store points above 16, in anticipation of a long period awake, for example. So a sleep of 10 hours after a period of strenuous activity will only give the maximum of 16 credits, not 20, and the individual will feel sleepy again after 16 hours, not 20. Similarly, if a period of wakefulness is foreshortened, say from 16 to 14 hours, that is, the individual is still in 2 hours of sleep credit, then a good sleep is unlikely for the whole time asleep. The fewer points you have of sleep credit, that is, the closer you are to having been awake for 16 hours, the readier you are to go to sleep, and you would expect to sleep for about 8 hours. It is very important to appreciate that one can build up a sleep debt, that is, you are owed sleep. For example, if you stay awake for 19 hours, and then sleep for 5 hours, and do this day after day, then you are not getting enough sleep and your performance will deteriorate, especially at altitude. Sleep loss or partial sleep is an occupational hazard in commercial aviation because of flight across time zones. So crew should be aware of their body temperature rise and fall in order to plan their sleep as efficiently as possible. Shift work, for example, working nights for a week and then working days for the week after, can cause havoc with one's sleep and physiological patterns. Yes, the body will acclimatize in due course, but if the shifts are changing, then all one can do is make the best of an unsatisfactory sleep situation by having regard for some of the factors that we have already looked at. Generally, it is accepted that if shifts have to change, then they should go from early shifts to late shifts, and then from a late shift to a night shift. For example, if you are going to fly overnight, try and sleep before the flight. But be aware that sleeping in the afternoon and evening is going to be difficult because your body temperature is rising, you are in sleep credit, it will be light outside, and there may be noise. If your night flight was from between 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., then perhaps the day before go to bed at the normal time of 10 p.m. and get up at 6. This will give you a full 16 hours sleep credit. But this would expire at the moment you start your flight, which means your entire flight will be in sleep debt. Therefore, go to bed for a few hours just before your flight. This will help you build up about 6 hours of sleep credit, which you'll be using throughout your night flight. Once your flight is finished, you will be a few hours into sleep debt, but at least your flight has not been in entire sleep debt. Variations for solving the sleep credit debt problem are infinite. Flight times can last up to 12 hours, to which you have to add the travel to work times, briefing times, delays, which overall can mean that long-haul crew can frequently be awake for more than 20 hours. Consequently, sleep planning is absolutely essential, but it is still a personal preference. The other major problem for crew on long-haul flights in their sleep planning is when they cross time zones. For example, from London to Los Angeles. This journey has a flight time of 12 hours and a time difference of 8 hours. If you left London at midday, the body clock after the 12-hour flight would say, "It's midnight, it's time to go to sleep." But in Los Angeles, it's 8 hours behind London, so in fact, it's 4 in the afternoon, local time. Do you go to bed anyway and wake up at midnight, Los Angeles time, with nowhere to go and nothing to do for 8 hours? Or do you try and stay awake until 9 p.m. to get into some semblance of local time synchronization, to aid in either your shopping or social life with the rest of the crew? This condition of your body clock operating on a different time scale to local time is known as the circadian dysrhythmia, or commonly known as jet lag. It has all the unpleasant effects we have looked at above. For a crew member having inadequate sleep, lack of concentration, irritability, stomach and bowel disorders, and tiredness. Is there any way in which one can mitigate the effects of jet lag? The natural shifting of Zeitgebers, or time-giving stimuli, such as daylight, will help adjust one's body clock to the new local time but it is a slow process. For every day you spend in the new time zone, your body clock will adjust 90 minutes towards the local time. So it will take about 6 days, that is 6 times 90 minutes, to acclimatize to a time zone 9 hours different from that at home. Flight crews seldom have more than 2 to 3 days away before they return home, so full acclimatization is impossible. The situation is made even worse by the fact that the dysrhythmia doesn't affect all the functions of the body to the same extent. For example, young women tend to suffer more than young men, as the hormone estrogen tends to be upset by jet lag. Small children who sleep a lot more than adults and old people do tend to be affected less.